Welcome to PRAJNA SPARKS special series, 59 Days of Healing, where we explore one maxim from the Tibetan Lojong text, 7 Points for Healing Dualistic Mind, each day to integrate the practice into our lives. Today is day 19, and we are starting point 5, track your progress. Maxim 19 reads, all the Buddha's teachings have a single purpose. Well, that's intriguing. What is that single purpose, you might ask? That purpose is described in different ways in different traditions. The Kagyu lineage of Tibetan Buddhism that I practice holds that the Buddha teaches in order to correct the root misperception that generates samsaric experience. The misperception is the existence of what's called a truly existent self. So, of course, that relates to humans. We all think of ourselves as being a self or having a self. It also is applicable to other living creatures like a cat or any other different animals. But even inanimate objects are to be understood as not having what's called a self entity. So, really, all of it is about not having a truly existent essence that makes a person, an animal, another being, or anything itself. In other words, we're not anywhere near as small as we imagine ourselves to be. We have this idea, for example, that we have a particular history or gender or personality or illness or habit pattern. And those things have a quality of existence. What the point of the Buddhist teaching is that it doesn't exist truly. What does truly mean? It means that it is always dependent on something, many things usually. In other words, nothing is completely isolated. Nothing is completely independent of anything. Everything exists in dependence on other things. That doesn't sound like a particularly mind-blowing thing to spend decades teaching if that's your single purpose. Why is that so important? Particularly when we're talking about our own experience, this sense of self, which is inborn. The smallest little creature has a survival instinct for this self as soon as they're born and so forth. That sense is what creates this dichotomy of self and other. It's what creates attachment to things that we want for the self and aversion for things that we don't want for the self, apathy for things that don't matter. We've talked about this in other episodes in this series, as well as other episodes in the podcast. What I want to talk about here is, what are we supposed to do with this maxim that all the Buddha's teachings have a single purpose? Let's say we're developing this practice of working with these maxims on a daily basis. Today is your day to work on this maxim. Are you supposed to understand the entire body of the Buddha's teachings? Are you supposed to completely penetrate what it means when the Buddha says that there is no, quote, truly existent self? Of course not. That's the entire thrust of his teachings. It's too much to think we're going to be able to do that in one day. So what are you supposed to do with this maxim? What are you supposed to do in the course of a day where we're trying to understand what's going on with this instruction? One way I work with this maxim is to see how the events of my day, my thoughts, my emotions, anything that happens throughout the day relates to the sense of self. On a very immediate level, we tend to think of this as self-importance, or in psychological terms, there's a similarity to what we call ego, even though ego is something else. When we're working with this maxim, one thing that might be really helpful is to just start questioning whether you're so sure that all the attributes you associate with yourself are as solid, unchanging, and independent of everything else as you think they are. Perhaps you think that you are an angry person. If you truly exist as an angry person, there is this subconscious energy That's saying no matter what I do, I'm never going to change. I'm always going to be like this. What these maxims are starting to do is to break up some of the tightness, some of the solidity around these beliefs so we can start to heal them. It's impossible to really heal things until we believe that we can change. A truly existent self, by definition, never changes. So, this misperception is actually working on a very subtle level. It may be undercutting the wishes, aspirations we may have for ourselves in immediate context as well as in a spiritual path. We hear about self sabotage, where we might subconsciously be doing things to harm ourselves. I don't think we're actually doing that, but I think that this maxim may help us to start unveiling some unexamined assumptions about who we are and how we exist in the world. As we continue working with this maxim, and let's say we're doing this practice over a long period of time, all the maxims will come up more than once. You might start extending that towards people you love, people you're not crazy about, and not be so convinced that they exist solely the way we perceive them. The same with belongings you might have, thoughts, opinions, and so forth. The thrust of this maxim is that the whole point of all the meditation, all the teachings, all of the instructions that the Buddha gives is to start reversing this misperception that keeps us trapped in very limited ideas about who and what we are, as well as others, as well as things, as well as the world and life itself. It's a huge, huge thing. Absolutely anything that's happening in your life, you can look at through this lens of non self. And if you can connect on that level, there's a sense of a little more lightness, a little more possibility, a little less rigidity and stuckness.
Well, I'm so excited that we are at point 7, which is about tracking your progress, because I love to track my progress. I will literally make little checklists of things I've already done just so I can check them off. So it's marvelous to do this. And I'm curious how this maxim is related to tracking your progress.
All of the maxims in point 5 are ways to gauge how much you're integrating this practice. How so? There's not a lot of them in this point. There's only 4 of them, but they're all things that are not easy to swing. So, as we just saw in the discussion about this maxim, it's fairly far along the way. So are the other 3 to follow in point 5. And all of them are valuable in tracking your progress because we can see as we work with these maxims how we expand our understanding in the case of number 19 of non self, where we can see how these instructions are helping us to lighten the way we get obsessed about a particular way of looking at things or a particular way of reacting to things. So it's not as easy as checking things off. It's more that you can gauge based on your proficiency with any of these 4 maxims, how much you're integrating. How broad is the view that the maxim brings to you? How easily are you able to take it up and so forth?
Oh, that's fantastic. Thank you. That's very helpful guidance. And I appreciate your description of this maxim because I encounter quite often how difficult it is for myself and for other people to experience this multiplicity of self and others. And I run into this a lot when I'm working with people about bridging the political divide, that people have such a solid idea of themselves and someone else in contrast to themselves in a different place. And so if people are having trouble figuring out where does this show up in my life, that I know that that's something that I'm seeing a lot, especially these days, of people seeing themselves and others as very different and very solid, and actually in ways that are misperceptions and very limited perceptions. So maybe this can be a good antidote for that.
There's so many places we can do that, but certainly whenever we experience conflict, it's a very easy place to start working with this, and it feels good. So we talk about how this practice is one of healing, transforming, and ultimately transcending. We don't have to think, oh, am I in the healing phase or in the transforming phase? That's not what tracking the progress means in this point. All you do is work with the maxims. The healing, moving to transforming, moving to transcending is something that just happens organically. All you do is contemplate these maxims, apply it to your life, examine, wow, did that change the way I experience things? How did it change it? How does that change my opinions, my beliefs, the view that's running my life? Slowly, we start to feel better, even in conflict situations. Maybe we can have difficult conversations with people on a much healthier level than we've been able to before, or what have you. And before you know it, usually you haven't even noticed that healing starts to slip into transforming, where you just seem like a different person. Maybe you encounter somebody who you haven't seen in years and they say, wow, you just seem so much happier or more cheerful or whatever it might be. It happens so slowly and so organically that we may not notice. Just work with each of the maxims, and that process happens by itself.
This has been Yeshe and Tanya on day 19 of PRAJNA SPARKS special series, 59 Days of Healing. Tune in daily for more maxims from the Tibetan Lojong text, 7 Points for Healing Dualistic Mind. Check the episode notes for more resources and email us at sparks@prajnafire.com with any questions. May all beings benefit.